Edwin, on social media, no, parang as the surveys were coming out, not just from Pulse Asia but from different firms, parang a lot of supporters of Vice President Leni Robredo and Senator Kiko Pangilinan were also pointing out that on Google Trends, parang salungat or baliktad yung resulta. Could you expound to us about this pag kumbaga
Discrepancy.
discrepancy or parang Hail Mary lang din ba to for those who truly believed in the campaign of Robredo and Pangilinan?
You know, I like I was telling a lot of interviews, I used to be a former government official, and we've always relied, for instance, on Pulse Asia to determine public sentiment. So every quarter we subscribe to them, and I've never seen any reason to doubt the accuracy of Pulse Asia. And so when all these things were coming along, and the numbers of Lenny weren't reflecting well on the surveys, particularly Pulsation, because Pulsation is the only one that publicized its findings. They started shooting the messenger because there was an alternative. Google Trends was the alternative. And I was looking at Google Trends. The very FAQ of Google Trends claimed that it's not a podcast. Number one. Number two, when you do Google Trends, you search the name. It's basically sentiment agnostic, but what they do is, because Google Trends is aggregates all the data, aggregates all the searches. It's anonymized. You don't know where it's coming from. You know, you've got a lot of searches being done, and maybe you could pinpoint the province, the region. I asked one of my people to look for it on the street level. They couldn't do it. So there's really no way for us to see who's doing the searches. But we only have this big data, and a number of companies try to use the data and come up with their own AI, came up with their own algorithm to determine, where are Bongbong and Len in that thing. But basically, it's sentiment agnostic. Eh. Unlike surveys ask a very direct question: Sino iboboto mo? Here on Google Trends or in social media, it does not specifically ask that question, but rather they look at engagement, they look at the searches, and come up with an algorithm that may suggest, oops, Len is leading, Bongbong is behind, or vice versa. So there is no one-to-one correspondence there. And for once, on one hand, survey directly asked the question, who are you voting for? And in all my years of presidential campaigns, we have always relied on Pulse Asia, SWS, and Lilo. And they've never been wrong. Towards, ang labanan lang talaga yun is towards the end eh. In the end, di ba? April survey or the May survey, for instance, you still see some changes. But and I was, we were I was pretty grim about it because the numbers of my candidato weren't high. But I could not personally on myself reconcile na, oh, Google Trends is doing very well, so we should rely on this. I've never had any experience of saying I can trust that. I've seen the other countries, the Google Trends and the surveys, they align. For instance, in the latest one, Macron and the surveys and Google Trends pointed to a Macron victory. And I was looking at the Twitter feed here, they were just predicting, or Google Trends predicted a Macron victory. They don't mention the fact that the surveys also pointed to a Macron victory. In this one and only country of ours, you see a huge variance between Google Trends and surveys. So I was telling everyone, let's forget about the surveys. Let's forget about the Google Trends. Let's just wait for the only survey that matters, which is the election day. And unfortunately, I was telling Ronnie last night, you were proven right, but sad for the country. And it's true. I mean, my candidate lost. But the reality of it all is there was no reason to, for me, at the very least, there were so many questions on the weighting and the classification, but I've not seen, I mean, position has been quite accurate for the longest time. And the question was, the joke going around was, pag nanalo si Lenny, wala nang trabaho si Ronnie Holmes. But that's why sabi ko hintayin natin ang May 9 kung sino tatama. And that's why medyo frustrated ako kasi kumbaga we pin our hopes on the Google Trends because the surveys weren't doing anything. Rather than doing the fact that mababa ang survey natin, let's look at the survey, especially surveys are really meant for the campaigns. You really sift through the survey and analyze where are we doing, what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong, where should we focus our attention. Instead of doing that, we're relying on Google Trends, which is a huge big data, which does not tell you anything, but searches are huge.
Yeah.
And some people just equate engagement to preference, which is a huge jump. And
Yeah.
maybe in some countries, I don't know what rules they came up with, but that's where we are. It is what it is right now that the surveys were proven right.
Yeah.
Unfortunate for the country.
Edwin, speaking of